As the saying goes, not all heroes wear capes. In this game's case, not all heroes are the ones to rise up and take up the sword against the evil creeping throughout the land. But one thing that isn't really touched upon very often is while these heroes are out trying to vanquish evil, whatever happens to the folks in the towns and villages they pass through on their journey? How does this affect their everyday lives? What challenges do they face? This is where A Story Beside comes in. Developed and published by Wayward Prophet, who also brought us the game World's Dawn, which I'd covered some time ago, the game has had quite a ride over its nearly 6 years of development, with developer and designer David Grant struggling with health and personal issues among other challenges. However, with the love and support from family, friends and the community, A Story Beside was finally completed and left early access in 2022. As I mentioned in the World's Dawn review, I was interested in what this game had to offer going forward, and I decided that if I was to cover the game, I would wait until it was finished before doing so, as I have this tendency of covering early access stuff and not really coming back to them in a timely manner. For transparency, a copy of the game was provided to me courtesy of David Grant himself. This review will contain footage from throughout the game, with mid to late game content being out of context. A Story Beside takes place in a small village called Pyreside. In this game you play as a young girl named Lyric, who is the youngest daughter of James and Caroline, the owners of the Sleepy Dragon Inn. Lyric lives at the inn with her parents, her older sister, and grandmother serving the merchants and adventurers who pass through, and A Story Beside chronicles Lyric's life from her childhood, through adulthood, and into her twilight years. The game has been put together in RPG Maker, I presume MV from the files, which is another feat in itself, as games that break the mold of how RPG Maker is used is something that interests me. But is the game any good? Find out in The Good. The overall story and themes present throughout the game was something I found really special about it. A Story Beside will provide choices for Lyric which may seem inconsequential and meaningless to Lyric as a child, but will have lifelong repercussions as she gets older and her choices start to carry more weight and consequences. From something as simple as telling the truth as a child, or how she interacts with her best friend Kelsey, can affect things that happen later on in life, and some of those choices could seal the fates of certain characters. Some of the choices about the village itself can also affect how the village will fare financially, and change either for the better or for the worse. Even choosing a partner for Lyric or staying alone becomes an important choice for later on. The game's choices were ones I didn't take lightly, and the story shows how those choices and consequences really matter in a meaningful and emotional way, which I think is this game's greatest strength. Portions of the game are narrated too, and the narration by Nicola Redmond was a really nice and natural touch to the story as Lyric recalls her memories in Pyreside.
That view, oh that view. Even as a child, I knew how lucky I was to have it. Songbirds flitting across the sky, moonfish shimmering in the lake, and the most romantic sunsets a girl could dream of, steps away from our door. Long, lazy hours I spent soaking it all in.
The game's music I thought was very fitting and worked hand in hand with the game's story as well. The game uses a lot of piano music to help establish the mood and setting throughout the game, and when the piano wasn't present, the sound effects and ambience really built the mood and atmosphere. I really do like the choice of piano music personally. It's a very expressive instrument and one that you can pick up the tone, pun unintended, and feeling of the piece that's being played, and it was put to excellent use in this game. However, the game isn't without fault, so let's discuss what I didn't like in The Bad. In all honesty, there isn't a lot for me to complain about. The biggest complaint I have is something that could be looked at or possibly addressed in a patch. I have had a number of freezing issues with the game. It's not so bad with a keyboard, but I have been noticing when playing with a controller that sometimes the game will freeze. You can still hear the sound for selecting options in a menu and the background music, but aside from that you can't interact with the game, forcing you to close it and then start it back up again. This is problematic, especially if you haven't saved the game in a while, so I do recommend saving often. The game freezing while I was playing using a controller actually got so frequent that it started to become somewhat of a nuisance. I played through the game twice from start to finish and only noticed about 2 instances with a keyboard, whereas I was getting the issue at least 2 to 3 times a chapter on a controller. There were other minor visual issues like Lyric being able to walk off the bridge leading out of the region, but they weren't game breaking and I thought they were pretty funny. The only other thing I can really think of is more of a spoiler, and it's that I felt one particular character isn't really touched upon much later in the story. It's up to you how important this character is to Lyric, but after a certain point in the game, you barely hear anything about them aside from a note. What did that character get up to over the years? How did their story end? I sort of thought maybe a little more closure for this character might have tied up this unanswered question I had for the game quite nicely. That's pretty much all I have to complain about, so let's wrap things up with the opinion. A Story Beside I think is a very solid game with excellent storytelling and themes, and the choices you make in the game really does make you stop and think about what's going on, and how the characters' fears and concerns start small and insignificant, and gradually become more permanent as time goes on, and really makes you wonder, what could have happened if I go back and chose differently? The music and sound effects did a great job in establishing the setting and atmosphere, and the only major issue I had with the game was a freezing issue which plagued me while I was playing it. The game can be completed in about 4 to 6 hours, but I played through the game twice to see what I'd missed out on with some choices. For a game made in RPG Maker, it's a creative use of the engine, much like World's Dawn was, and I think the game is definitely worth picking up and playing just for the story alone. It's a really nice, refreshing change compared to a lot of the other games I play, and it's easily an example of an indie game which shows a lot of heart and soul. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give A Story Beside a Dawnflower out of 10. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.